The Israeli cabinet has been meeting for the last few hours to approve the terms of a 6-week ceasefire in Gaza. If it passes, the agreement would be implemented in 3 stages, beginning on Sunday. Phase 1 would see Israeli troops withdraw from densely populated areas of Gaza. Hamas would release 33 hostages, while Israel would free hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Aid agencies are also preparing a relief operation to ease Gaza's humanitarian crisis.
Hundreds of trucks heading to Gaza, hoping to deliver tons of food and medical supplies. Plans are in place for deliveries to begin on Sunday, as soon as the ceasefire deal comes into effect.
We're happy to be crossing the border. Gaza will be blessed and we will be blessed. We've been here a long time, waiting for them to allow us to cross.
Airstrikes in the Strip have increased in the past few days. Officials say more than 100 people have been killed since the deal was announced on Wednesday. Still, Gazans are welcoming the deal. We're very happy to hear this news. Very happy. Hopefully there won't be any more warplanes or strikes from the first day of the truce, and people will be able to sleep with ease. And hopefully everyone can go back to their homes and we'll see our loved ones, our families and friends. Hopefully Sunday will bring us joy and happiness. It's been a long-awaited decision that is expected to pause the fighting between Hamas and Israeli forces in Gaza. Families of the dozens of hostages held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip say it brings renewed hope to get their loved ones back. This will be the beginning of the healing and rehabilitation process that the country so desperately needs. Imagine us hugging our loved ones. We're so close. Our battle is entering a new phase, fulfillment of the agreement until the last hostage. Israeli officials say they believe 98 hostages remain in Gaza, but it's unclear how many are still alive. Far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition have threatened to resign over the deal and bring down his government. The truce could bring much-needed relief to the Strip, but there is still great uncertainty about whether the deal can last.
DW's Konstantin Eggert is in Jerusalem following developments for us. Konstantin, the cabinet meeting discussing this deal started several hours ago. The assumption was that this was a done deal. So what's the hold-up?
Well, if only we knew for certain, but it's clear that the meeting has been going on now for, let me count, something like 6 hours. That's a long time. And by now, we don't even know whether the statement will be published before the end of the day. I would like to remind you that this is Sabbath, the Jewish holiday, so usually no work is done during this time, and frequently statements of the Prime Minister's office, government statements, are delayed until the end of Sunday, the evening of the evening of Saturday, when the Sabbath is finally over. Also, there are reporters that watch the building where the cabinet is meeting, and no one has left the place, so we can only speculate what really goes on. One thing that's been mentioned is in the Israeli media that another far-right member of the government, Minister of Finance, Smotrich, may be kind of adding demands to Prime Minister Netanyahu in exchange for supporting the deal. For example, there were indications in the media that he wanted the Chief of General Staff to be fired, but again, it's all speculation.
So could this pushback from the far-right elements of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, could this threaten the ceasefire, and could this threaten his own position?
Well, so far, only one minister, the National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir, said that he will resign if the deal goes through. He announced it yesterday. He said that he will still not sort of be against the government in parliament, and even when his party if his party leaves the coalition, Netanyahu remains with a very slim but still majority in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. The opposition promised that it will support Netanyahu in everything that concerns the deal. So probably his government will hold in such circumstances. But if another members of the cabinet leave, then the coalition may really become a minority government, and then talk of new elections will resurface.
Let's assume, or let's say that the deal will be signed off on. Phase 1 of this agreement would start on Sunday. Can you talk us through the details of that?
Well, the details are that on Sunday, the ceasefire is supposed to sort of start at noon local time. At 4 to 5 p.m., the exchange of hostages, 33 hostages, for Palestinian security prisoners, 95 of them, the list of 95 of them was published by the Israeli Interior Ministry, is supposed to start. So this is essentially what's going to happen on the day that the deal is supposed to take hold finally.
And do you think an agreement would be welcomed by most Israelis?
Well, if you look at the opinion polls, yes, 58% according to Israeli Democracy Institute support the deal wholeheartedly. 10-12% more with reservations. But the hostages' families have been to a large extent driving the public opinion here. These faces of hostages look at you from posters from kind of every corner, every wall in Israeli cities. It's a very important issue for the Israelis. So I think that the majority thinks that lives of these people are priceless and they should be liberated as soon as possible.
DW's Konstantin Eggert reporting from Jerusalem. Konstantin, thank you. And I'm joined now by Jonathan Purcell, a Senior Public Affairs and Communications Officer at the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians in London. Welcome to DW, Jonathan. Homes, schools, hospitals, infrastructure, they all lie in ruins after Israel's offensive in Gaza. Can you talk to us about what it's going to take to rebuild the territory?
Thanks very much for having me on, Anya. So I think the first thing to say is that it's a relief, of course, a very cautious relief, that after 15 months, it appears that this genocide is going to come to an end. As you say, I totally agree that the first step is for humanitarian aid to come in as quickly as possible. There's going to be a whole host of logistical challenges when it comes to that. I mean, we are hearing that 600 aid trucks are going to have to come in. That's already likely to be very insufficient. We've seen that Israel has been blockading aid for the last 15 months, and that needs to come to an end. And also when it comes to the roads themselves, in Rafah in particular, the road infrastructure has been completely destroyed. So politics aside, even the logistical questions of getting this aid in is going to be very difficult. But as you say, every aspect of life has been decimated in Gaza. Bakeries have been destroyed, the healthcare infrastructure has been decimated, and we're talking about Palestinians returning to their homes, but for many, there will not be a home to come back to. So the logistical challenges when it comes to this humanitarian aid is absolutely massive.
Jonathan, the decimation obviously is without question. I do just need to say that, of course, the Israeli government rejects the claim of genocide. There's obviously been no legal ruling yet, and it's something that's still being investigated by the International Court of Justice. But just to come back to what you were saying, I mean, Gaza is littered with debris, bombed out buildings that could collapse, and of course with tons of unexploded ordnance. So as you're saying, Gazans want to go back home, but how dangerous are these areas that Gazans are now beginning to return to?
So yes, as you say, we're a legal organisation and we follow very closely the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. And given the plausible genocide that the judges have said in their advisory opinion, that's the reason why we use this term. I appreciate the qualifications that you're making. When it comes to the ground situation, there's going to be so much that is going to go on for so long for now. So, for instance, landmines that remain in place, the fact that the healthcare system is utterly decimated, meaning that those who are wounded will not be able to receive help immediately. And those with long-lasting conditions, diabetics such as myself in Gaza, have not had the insulin that they need, and the long-lasting impact of that is going to be massive. So we've seen this report in The Lancet of the death toll being in the 60,000s, but in fact, when it comes to the non-traumatic deaths that are going to continue after ceasefire, we need to be very, very realistic about how dire the situation will continue to be, even if everything goes smoothly and we do finally, as we hope, get to this ceasefire on Sunday.
As you say, it's not just the buildings destroyed, is it? I mean, 46,000 Palestinians believed to have been killed, if not more, thousands of grieving families and traumatized children. So talk to us about the psychological scars. Can you help us understand the psychological scars that will be left behind by this conflict and how that can be dealt with?
Absolutely, yes. So as you say, entire families have been wiped out, but in many cases, I've met many families in London, for instance, who have had dozens of their family members killed in Gaza. The impact of that is unimaginable. And for the survivors, there's so much trauma, especially those with, amputations who have life-changing injuries. But yeah, I think when we're talking about the psyche and the mental impact moving forward, what we really need to think about is the accountability. Because if we're going to have true peace, if we're going to have true reconciliation, and if we're going to have true justice, I think what lies at the heart of that is accountability for the Israeli politicians and also the Israeli leaders of the IDF, the chain of command, who are responsible for this decimation of Gaza and this destruction of life of the Palestinian people. And that's why these arrest warrants issued for Netanyahu and Gallant are so important in the International Criminal Courts. It's why the International Court of Justice genocide case that South Africa has taken forward is so important. Because if we want to see this justice, and if we want to begin to make even the slightest progress on this collective trauma for the Palestinian people, that is what's going to lie at the heart of it. That's what's going to be so crucial.
And looking further still, what do you think are the chances of a two-state solution, of a sovereign and independent state of Palestine?
It's a very, very important question. I mean, absolutely no one has a crystal ball in this regard. I think that the very first question is ensuring that we don't get ahead of ourselves and that this ceasefire works. So, right now we need to ensure that the Israeli government and Hamas abide by the terms of this ceasefire. But as we begin to move forward, as the humanitarian aid comes in, as the accountability for the perpetrators is met, after that, as you say, we need to be looking to the long term. And what's been missing for so long is the self-determination of the Palestinian people. It lies at the heart of this issue, at the absolute crux. And unfortunately, for so long, the Palestinian people seem to be amongst the few in the world who seem to be exempted from this right to self-determination. And if we want to see true peace, if we want to see true justice, we need to see the lifting of this occupation across Palestine, not just in Gaza. As the International Court of Justice has ruled, the occupation is illegal. We need to see that lifting. We need to see the self-determination of the Palestinian people lying at the heart of the question. And then we can begin to look at a true lasting peace with justice at its heart.
Jonathan Purcell, Senior Public Affairs and Communications Officer at the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a closer look at all of this with Fawaz Gerges. He's a professor of international relations at the London School of Economics with a focus on modern Middle Eastern politics. Fawaz, good to see you again. Now, not everyone in Netanyahu's government is happy about this deal. How committed is the Prime Minister himself to see it succeed?
Israel has made it very clear. He wants a partial ceasefire. He does not really want a comprehensive end to the war. This has been the stumbling block, and this is why the Biden administration failed to convince Israeli Prime Minister to end the war, because Hamas insists on releasing the hostages for a comprehensive ceasefire. My take on it is that the first stage will go through, because what Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition want, they want to get the hostages back home, because the hostages, it's a massive pain and scars for Israeli society. But once the hostages are back, my take on it is that Israeli Prime Minister will most likely resume the fighting, and that's why I don't believe the second phase will basically be implemented by Israel.
You talk about the failures of the Biden administration. Donald Trump is about to take office within days, and he wants this conflict solved, badly so. Does he have enough leverage over the players involved to make them see this through?
Yes. I think the most decisive factor in the equation was the Donald Trump factor, because he exerted pressure on Israeli Prime Minister. Again, my take is that Benjamin Netanyahu has gifted the ceasefire to Trump. He wanted to make Donald Trump happy because he expects to extract concession from Trump later on. We do not know whether Donald Trump will basically tolerate or sanction Benjamin Netanyahu if and when he resumes the fighting in Gaza. But one thing we know about Donald Trump, he does not really like wars. He does not really want a big war in the Middle East, and he has made it very clear, even though Donald Trump fully supports the hardliners, the far-right hardliners within the Benjamin Netanyahu coalition.
What concessions could those be?
What they want to expand the settlement building in the occupied West Bank. This is a big priority for the far-right extremist coalition of Benjamin Netanyahu. In fact, they want to annex the West Bank. This is the last remaining bit of historical Palestine. And they also want to maintain Israeli troops in Gaza. I mean, keep in mind, regardless of what happened in the next, few weeks, the Israeli army will never leave Gaza permanently. Israel has already established a buffer zone between Israel and Gaza, and Israel will maintain a sizable segment of troops in Gaza.
You have repeatedly spoken about the need for an international peacekeeping force in Gaza, especially looking at the day after, something that we don't really have a plan for yet. Do you see hope for that once there is actually a peace to keep?
I could really say yes, but I don't think there's any hope. And the reason why, if you had listened to Antony Blinken's speech a few days ago in Washington, I am in Washington now, he made it very clear that Benjamin Netanyahu has consistently opposed any planning for the morning after. Consistently. He frustrated the Biden administration's attempts to create a plan for the morning after. So what you have now is Hamas, and Hamas will most likely remain a major political and military force. According to Antony Blinken and the American intelligence, Hamas has been able to recruit as many troops as it had lost in the fighting in the past 15 months. So I don't think you're going to have any international force. And Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition oppose the return of the Palestinian Authority to Gaza consistently. So what you're going to have is Hamas filling the vacuum that exists. And that's why I'm not really very hopeful for the end of fighting in Gaza after the end of the 6 weeks, the first phase of the ceasefire.
That was Middle East expert Fawaz Gerges. Always great to get your insights. Thank you so much for your time.